before this episode, if you want to see the words as well as hear them, get exclusive content, access to the regular episodes before anyone else, and take part in the monthly questions and comments edition, you can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify and get all of that for the price of a very average coffee a month. Okay, let's get on with it. Here's Arielle Konig on the stand describing the moment she says her husband tried to kill her on a hiking trail.
And he, like I said, he's on top of me, and he had a syringe in his hand, and he says, "Hold still."
Her husband, Gerhardt Konig, has been found guilty of her attempted manslaughter. It really was a trial of he said, she said. So last episode, I went through his words. Now I'm going to look at hers. Welcome to Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I've studied the words of thousands of criminals, so I know how people use words to lie, to cheat, and to manipulate. And I know what the truth sounds like too. Now, I thought this was going to be actually quite a bland episode because compared to how Gerhardt told the story, Arielle is much cleaner. She's more direct. She's more believable as a result. And then I did my analysis and started really digging into the words that she used, and I noticed something very intriguing. I can't wait to share that with you in this episode. Now, she talks very differently from the way that he does. Here's both of them side by side talking about basically the same incident.
And I get to her and I'm like, touching her, just putting my hands on her arms, and I was like, what are you doing? What's going on?
What happens then?
She keeps yelling, and she kind of grabs my wrists and throws herself on the ground and pulls me down with her.
He had grabbed me really hard and was moving me, so we kind of wrestled a little bit, and I threw myself onto the ground because there's a lot of trees and shrubs there so that I could hold on. Well, he got on top of me and he was kind of trying to pull me, and we're wrestling, and he ended up straddling me, so he had his legs on either side, kind of across my waist.
When I looked at Gerhardt, I said I thought he showed signs in his words of having a fragile ego. I thought when he was talking about the incident, the attempted manslaughter incident, or he was in trial for attempted murder, I thought he was hiding anger that he had at the time, hiding his actions as well, and choosing his words very, very carefully. So let's look at Arielle, and what I want you to do here is listen for some things, just like him. Listen to how she uses tenses. Listen, is she doing any downplaying of what happened? And also, pay attention to any stutters or false starts that she has. Are you ready to listen? Here's Arielle, part one.
Okay, after this happens, after you get to where the defendant is on the trail, what happened next?
When I walk up to him, then he grabbed me really forcefully by my upper arms, and he said, "I'm so sick of this shit. Get back over there." And he starts pushing me back towards the cliff.
While the defendant was grabbing you and pushing you, what did you do?
I was surprised. It felt almost like he was kidding at first, and I was like, "What are you doing?" But he had grabbed me really hard and was moving me, so we kind of wrestled a little bit, and I threw myself onto the ground because there's a lot of trees and shrubs there so that I could hold on.
As you threw yourself to the ground, how did the defendant respond?
Well, he got on top of me and he was kind of trying to pull me, and we're wrestling, and he ended up straddling me, so he had his legs on either side, kind of across my waist.
Okay, and then you said straddling. Can you describe what that looked like for us?
Sure. I'm laying on my back, and he's on top of me with kind of like one leg on either side across my waist, facing me.
Once the defendant was on top of you, what did he do next?
So he was first trying to pull me, try to get me closer to the cliff, and again, I could kind of hold on to the roots and stuff that were around us, and then he had a backpack that he was hiking with, and he, like I said, he's on top of me, and he had a syringe in his hand, and he says, "Hold still," and I see the syringe, and I just kind of like bat it away from us both.
What do you think then? This is her giving evidence, and this is her giving evidence for the prosecution, so it's the prosecutor that is questioning her there. Okay, after this happens, after you get to where the defendant is on the trail, what happened next is the question. And she says, When I walked up to him, then he grabbed me really forcefully by my upper arms. Now, she starts off in present tense, not when I walked up to him. And the question was, what happened next? So the question is in the past tense, what happened next? But she answers in the present tense. Just like I said with Gerhardt, some reasons that people talk in the present tense when they are talking about past events. One of those could be to be more dramatic. You'll see this being used by comedians, for example, all the time when they're telling one of their stories. They will tell it in the present tense, so it's all about now, and it just sounds a little bit more dramatic, hits home a little bit better when you're talking. I don't think she's doing that, so there's a couple of things at play here. Could be trauma. When we're recalling traumatic events, we feel like we're there sometimes when we're telling them. The feelings are all there. It feels very real to us, and we may talk in the present tense. Another one is we're making things up, and we're making things up as we talk. It's happening inside a part of our brain that is now, not a part of our brain that is in the past. So our brain naturally uses present tense to describe that. Don't know what's going on there. And look, she then slips into past tense. So when I walk up to him is in the present tense. Then he grabbed me and really forcefully by my upper arms and he said, so this is all in the past tense. I know in her telling of the story, there is some really fine detail there. So really forcefully by my upper arms. So she's not just by my arms. She's not doing just that. She's giving some fine detail, but she's not like trying to overdo the detail or really force the detail on it. There just is a detail there, a detail that wasn't really there when Gerhardt spoke. So really forcefully by my upper arms, and he said, past tense, I'm so effing sick of this. Get back over there. And he starts pushing me back toward the cliff. And she moves into present tense again. You know, he started pushing me towards the cliff. She says, he starts pushing me back towards the cliff. While the defendant was grabbing you and pushing you, what did you do is the question. And her answer is, I was surprised. It felt almost like he was kidding at first. And I was like, what are you doing? But he grabbed me really hard and was moving me. The question was, what do you do? The first thing she says is more what she felt, not what she did. She says, I was surprised. That's an emotion. That's not an action. It felt like he was kidding at first. That's a feeling, not an action. And I was like, what are you doing? So she is there describing an action in what she said. And then she goes and talks about him again. But he grabbed me really hard and was moving me. So she's sharing more thinking. There is one action in there. But in response to the question, what did you do? She's not sharing action. She says, so we kind of wrestled a little bit and I threw myself onto the ground because there's a lot of trees and shrubs there so that I could hold on. Once again, we have that fine detail there. There's a lot of trees and shrubs there so that I could hold on. She's not overdoing it again. It's very factual detail that she is adding in. But the first part of that answer, so we kind of wrestled a little bit. And what she is saying is there was a tussle between the two of them. She's not talking about just one person. She's taking some, responsibility for being involved in this wrestling. I'm not putting any judgment on that. You know, if someone was trying to push me towards the end of a cliff, I would be doing something backwards as well. But it's interesting that she's not. And we see this a lot in storytelling where all the blame and all the action is put on one person and the person who's kind of guilty is holding back on their own actions and trying to make the other person look like the bad person. But no, she takes ownership as much as she gives ownership of the wrestling. However, she does have, we kind of wrestled a little bit. So it's not really wrestling, it's kind of wrestling, and it's a little bit. That's low confidence language, kind of wrestled a little bit. Now, she does a lot of this. Is it because she's talking with low confidence, i.e. she's not really 100% committed to what happened, or she's not telling us the full truth, so she's holding back a little bit, kind of wrestled a little bit? Or are these kind of crutches that she uses when she's talking? Lots of people say kinda, sorta a lot when they talk. We will see more as we go. The next question, as you threw yourself to the ground, how did the defendant respond? She says, well, he got on top of me and he was kind of trying to pull me and we're wrestling and he ended up straddling me so that he had his legs on either side, kind of across my waist. I think you can see the detail, the factual detail there again. She does start with well, which I always say, when someone starts an answer with well, watch out, you're getting a bit of an explanation rather than just a straight answer. However, It does seem to be a straight answer. She's asked, how did the defendant respond? Well, he got on top of me and he was we've got that trying to pull me. So that, again, low confidence, or is it just a crutch? Again, she takes ownership for we're wrestling. And then she says he ended up straddling me. That's a jump on time. When someone's saying, telling you a story, for example, went out for a few drinks last night, ended up not getting back till 3 o'clock. Huge jump in time there. And that ended up is a jump in time. There's some action, something going on. I'm not saying she's being malicious or nefarious here. She's just being brief, I think. And we're wrestling and he ended up straddling me so that he had his legs on either side across my waist. I just want to just go back there. She said she threw herself on the ground. Yeah, she didn't say that he got on top of her at that point. I thought there might be a contradiction there. There's not. She's talking very, very cleanly. Okay, and then you said straddling. Can you describe what that looked like for us? She says, sure. Now, that's different from a well or a so at the beginning of an answer. That's like, yeah, very confidently, I can describe what that looked like. So I've got some thoughts that maybe she is talking with low confidence, with the kind ofs and likes. However, sure is a highly confident word to use. I'm laying on my back, present tense though, and he's on top of me, kind of like... So we've got kind of like one leg on either side across my waist facing me. We've got the detail there again, facing me. I find this all very realistic, and what that looked like, maybe she's picturing that in her head, which is why we've got the present tense there in her words. Don't worry, it's not all indications of truth and so on. We're about to get to something that, it takes a jump. Once the defendant was on top of you, what did he do next? She starts with so. Red alert. We might be getting an explanation, I think, coming here. So he was first trying to pull me, trying to get me closer to the cliff. Trying indicates no success, which is a good thing here. And again, I could kind of hold on to the roots, so kind of hold on to the roots and stuff that were around us. Maybe she was just kind of holding on. Maybe she had hold for a bit and then they gave way, or, she couldn't hold on that long. Maybe that's why kind of comes into it there. And then he had a backpack that he was hiking with. So, and then is a jump in time. And then she introduces this backpack. And look, when people are telling deceptive stories, very often they have to sort of jump the timeline in order to make something make sense, because they realize that the lie I'm telling is not going to hold up unless I introduce something that happened a while before. And that's what this backpack reminds me of. He had a backpack that he was hiking with. She brings that in and it almost has no relevance to what she's going to say next. It's just as if she thought, I need to introduce this element here of the backpack. And he was hiking with, he had a backpack would have been enough. He was hiking with explains the backpack a little bit. So there's a little change here in what's going on. I'm like, she's being a little bit different here. And then, jump in time, he had a backpack that he was hiking with, and he, like I said, he's on top of me, and he had a syringe in his hand, and he says, hold still. The syringe has appeared from nowhere, and she's saying that she's seen it because he has a syringe in his hand, and he's saying, hold still. And I see the syringe, and I just kind of like bat it away from us both. She saw the syringe twice. She says he's got a syringe in his hand and saying, hold still. And then she says, I see the syringe, and I just kind of bat it away from us both. And it's, again, it's present tense. It's not I saw the syringe and I batted it away from us both. This is in the present tense. I'm sensing a change here around this syringe. She's saying she saw it twice, which is, again, people who are telling detective stories will jump around the timelines like that. She's already seen the syringe and then she says she saw it again. So look, I'm picking up some things around this syringe that I'm not quite as comfortable with as some of the other things. But here, in her first answer that I've looked at, she is fluent. You can hear no stuttering, no false starts where, someone starts a sentence and then thinks, and then says something else entirely. It's very clear. She shares her thinking very freely. She shares really relevant detail as well, apart from the backpack, which hasn't been quite so relevant, but most of it is just finely relevant. But the syringe part, I'm not so sure. Let's listen to some more of Arielle talking, especially about the syringe.
When you first saw that syringe in his hand, did you actually see where it came from?
I didn't see where it came from, no.
All right, and you said you were able to bat it. Do you know where it went?
It just fell on the ground sort of near us. It would have been to my left because I could still kind of see it in my periphery. So I was trying to make sure it wasn't going to get grabbed again.
And then could you describe what you remember about the syringe, what it looked like?
Sure. It was a clear syringe with a blue piece, maybe blue plunger, I guess is what that's called.
Once you were able to bat the syringe away onto the ground, what did the defendant do next?
So he had taken his backpack off and it was on the ground to his left, so kind of to the right side of my body here. And he was digging in that with his left hand and then kind of holding me down with his right hand. And I'm screaming and I'm saying, "What are you doing? Get off me!" And he's saying like, "You're done. I'm so sick of your, so done with you." And I'm trying to kind of protect myself and get out of there, but also he's gripping his hand closed really hard, and there's a vial in his hand, so I was trying to pry his hand open so I could grab that vial out.
By the way, if you were interested in the testicles from the last episode, there will make a reappearance. But back to the syringe. When you first saw that syringe in his hand, did you actually see where it came from? And she gives to me, this is what a perfect, honest answer says. She says, "I didn't see where it came from, no." It's a yes-no question. The answer's got a no in it, fairly near the start, only a few words in. She takes ownership of it. "I didn't see where it came from, no." And it has the content. It's not just a no, it is she's saying what she's saying no to. "I didn't see where it came from, no." But she did mention the backpack earlier. So I'm interested, did it come from the backpack? Is it just an assumption it came from the backpack? Why did she mention the backpack? All right. And you said you were able to bat it. Do you know where it went? A yes-no question. And this time there is no in the answer. A slight warning, slight red flag for us there, maybe like a light red flag for us there. She says, "It just fell on the ground sort of near us." And you know I'm going to pick up on that word just. It just fell. That's a minimizer. Did something else happen? Or did it do more than just fall? Just is so often used in deception to focus us, to minimize us, to make it sound all very small. It just fell on the ground, sort of near us. Again, said with low confidence. It would have been to my left because I could still kind of see it in my periphery. So I was trying to make sure it wasn't going to get grabbed again. Logically, though, that all makes sense, and she's sharing her thought process with us. Very hard to share your thought process if you're lying because you didn't have the thoughts. Never mind having to make up events, having to make up the thoughts. That's even harder. Not saying it's impossible, but it's very hard to do. And then could you describe what you remember about the syringe, what it looked like? "Sure," she says at the beginning again. The confidence is back. "It was a clear syringe with a blue piece, maybe a blue plunger, I guess that's what it's called." Really clear. Once you were able to bat the syringe away onto the ground, what did the defendant do next? She says, so he had taken his backpack off. So the backpack gets mentioned, but it's very strange. She didn't say earlier that he was wearing the backpack. She just said he had the backpack. I kind of assumed in my head that he was wearing it from the way she was talking, but really she did not say he was wearing it. It could have just been that he had this backpack. But she's jumped over this taking the backpack off. She never describes in all of this attack, or maybe it was prior to the attack, when the backpack was taken off. It was on the ground to his left. You'll see all these left and rights, and they're very, very consistent. I've checked them out. If he's on top of her, they're facing each other, which again was another bit of detail that she added. Then his left is her right and so on. She's got that down pat. So kind of to the right side of my body here. And he was digging in that with his left hand and then kind of holding me down with his right hand. Now, there's something that was quite reminiscent of Gerhardt, actually. And he, where, she's going to say something about him. He, but she doesn't. Where, they're doing something together, but she doesn't tell us what that is. Filler word while she thinks of what it is. She wants to say potentially something that is safe. And she says, "I'm screaming." And I'm saying, "What the F are you doing? Get off of me." And he's saying like, "F you, you're done." Now you'll notice she's not, again, downplaying her own part. She's screaming. She's not saying, "I was just, very quiet and, not angry or anything like that." She's saying, "I'm screaming," and saying that she was swearing as well when she was doing it. "What the F are you doing?" She gives us quite a lot of what he says. So F you, you're done. I'm so sick of your shit. So done with you. And I'm trying to kind of protect myself and get out of there. Trying to kind of protect myself. Again, it's a little bit low confidence. But he's also gripping his hand closed really hard. There's a vial in his hand. It's just appeared from nowhere again. She doesn't say that she sees it. When she's talking about it there by just saying there's a vial in his hand, she's saying she is aware of the presence of this vial in his hand. However, she doesn't say where he got it from, when he got it, how he got it. You might think he got it from the backpack, but she doesn't talk about him getting that out, and she doesn't say that it's just appeared or as it's kind of from nowhere this vial appears in his hand. So I was trying to pry his hand open so I could grab that vial out. So she was asked what did the defendant do next, and she talks more about her. She does talk about him taking the backpack off, but then she talks about her screaming, what he says, and then the fact that this vial appeared, but then what she was doing, which was trying to pry the vial out of his hand. So here, the syringe part and the vial part, it continues to be lumpy for me. These things kind of magically appear and reappear and so on. It's all a little bit different from the rest of the story, but it's still clear. We still have all the relevant details in there, not overblown details, not dramatic storytelling, just relevant details there. And she's not downplaying her part. She's been talking about wrestling, she's been talking about swearing, and she's been talking about screaming too. Let's hear some more from Arielle.
Which hand did you see the vial in?
The vial was in his right hand.
Okay. And did you actually get to see the entire vial?
No.
Okay. What part of it did you see?
I could see pieces of it because I'm trying to pry his fingers off of it so that I can grab it and throw it.
Were you able to open his hand that was holding the vial?
Not enough to get the vial away.
All right. You mentioned the defendant was saying some things. Can you tell us what you remember he said as he was on top of you?
Yeah. I'm screaming and he's telling me, shut up. Nobody's going to hear you out here. Nobody's coming to save you. And I'm saying, you can't do this. Everyone knows we're on a hike. They'll know this wasn't an accident and our kids will be orphans. You'll go to jail and I'll be dead. You have to stop. And again, he's saying, you're done. We're done with you. We don't need you anymore. You're done. You're done.
Some interesting answers there. First question, which hand did you see the vial in? And she says the vial was in his right hand. And if you're watching this and you're a body language person, she looks somewhere to remember that. I'd love your comments on that. And did you actually get to see the entire vial? She says no. And she stutters a little bit there. Now, she doesn't stutter a lot. Nowhere near as stuttery as her husband, but she does stutter there. Did you get to see the entire vial? No. Okay, which part of it did you see? And she doesn't really give an answer to this. She says she could see pieces of it, but not which part she could see. Could she see the top, the bottom? See clearly it was a vial? She doesn't say. She says, I could see pieces of it cause I'm trying to pry his fingers off it so that I can grab it and throw it, which is a little bit extra as well. Which part of it did you see? I could see pieces of it, would answer that question. Or I could see the top of it, or I could see that it was a vial. I could see the glass or the plastic or whatever, would answer the question. But then she goes on, and now interestingly, what is added in is extra, not extra about him, it's extra about her. She's not trying to put some blame or talk about the violence of him and get back to how bad he is. She's talking about herself, her actions, and trying to pry the fingers off so she can grab and throw it. Were you able to open his hand that was holding the vial? She says, not enough to get the vial away. You mentioned the defendant was saying some things. Can you tell us what you remember he said as he was on top of you? And I want you to just pay attention to the question. Can you tell us what you remember he said as he was on top of you? And she answers more with what she said than he said, or equal amounts. She wasn't asked about herself, but everything that's gone before was kind of wrestling and she was holding on to roots and so on. But what she describes is almost like a conversation. There's a lot of dialogue going on here compared to what she's been describing before, and also compared to what Gerhardt described before. But she says, can you tell us? Yeah, I can. I'm screaming. So she starts with herself, and he's telling me, interesting bit of commanding language there. He's telling me, shut the F up. Nobody's going to hear you out here. Nobody's coming to save you. And I'm saying, like, you can't do this. So she's again gone to what she was saying. And she's telling us about her efforts. It's the exact same as when she was talking about trying to pry his fingers off the vial. She's telling us about her efforts verbally to calm this situation down. I'm saying, like, you can't do this. Everyone knows we're on a hike. They'll know this wasn't an accident, and our kids will be orphans. You'll all go to jail. You'll go to jail, and I'll be dead. Like, you have to stop now. This wasn't an accident is an interesting choice of words, because completely get if he was trying to push her off a cliff, then that may look like an accident. Oh, she got too close to the edge. We were taking a selfie. She took one too many steps backwards and so on. That would be an accident. But if he has a syringe and he's going to put some drugs in her, then that's not going to look like an accident. That's going to look like, something else entirely. So I want to know why she jumps to, they'll know this wasn't an accident. Like, no, they'll not. A better phrase, like, they'll know you did this. The accident thing is very interesting as to where did that come from. There's a few things she talks about where I'm like, why are we talking that way? Why has that idea come up? They'll know this wasn't an accident. The syringe and vial just wouldn't appear as an accident, would it? Unless she knows, a more detailed story. And again, he's saying, like, you're done. We're done with you. We don't need you anymore. You're done. You're done. Now, that done words, it's all very final, but I'm interested in the fact that he or she reports him saying, we're done with you. We don't need you anymore. Now, is that the family? Is that the kids? I don't know how many kids they've got. I know they've at least got one. But man, that is some brutal language. If that what's happened, saying, I'm going to kill you because we as a family are done with you. So here, there is a consistency there in her storytelling. There still is some clarity there, but I'm still not 100% convinced by the syringe and the vial parts. We'll go back to the episode in a moment, but if this breakdown hits home, make sure you're following or subscribe to this podcast, because what I'm doing here isn't just a one-off episode. We are building a skill. And like any talent worth having, it takes repetition. The more you hear these patterns, the more naturally you'll spot them in your actual life. I hear it from listeners so often. Eventually, you can't unhear this stuff. You'll be in a meeting or on a call, and you'll start noticing the subtext earlier than anyone else, which gives you an edge in how you respond. If you aren't ready to commit to training just yet, but you found this episode valuable, do me a quick favour. Leave a rating or share this episode. It's the best way to feed the algorithms and ensure these tools get into the ears of the people who genuinely need them. And if you want to be more careful with how you speak, to talk with more clarity, authority and confidence, then do search for my other podcast. It's available everywhere. Just search for How Words Work. Right, let's get back to the episode.
Did telling the defendant any of these things that you told him, did that get him to stop?
No, not really. And I had said, like, your mom just sent me a really beautiful text for my birthday. Like, your family will be upset if I die. You can't face our kids after this, And he did seem at that point to, like, calm down a little bit. Like, it seemed like he took a deep breath and calmed down. And so I had this moment where I was like, okay, this is the break, like, I can get out. And then he just starts hitting me with a rock.
Okay. I'm going to backtrack for just a moment, Arielle. As the defendant was on top of you, as the defendant was saying things, and as you were saying things back, were you trying to defend yourself physically at all?
Yes, and I'm screaming and trying to defend myself physically. So I think I bit his forearm at one point, trying to, that would have been his right forearm. And then I was also squeezing his testicles with so I had my right hand trying to squeeze his testicles to get him to get off of me.
Okay, and was that, when you were doing those things, was that before or after he calmed down, as you just said?
That was before he calmed down.
Okay. So what happened, you said, after the defendant calmed down?
Oh, well, it felt like he calmed down because it looked like he took a deep breath. And again, I was screaming, and so he's covering my mouth and stuff, and then we had this moment of, like, he seems like he takes a deep breath, And then he just starts hitting my face and my head with a rock.
Did you see where the defendant got the rock from?
I didn't see where he got it from, but like spatially, he was like reaching up around this area of my head. So my impression was that there was a rock on the ground near my head that he was able to grab.
The first question that's asked of her there, did telling the defendant any of these things, and that was the, stop, the kids will be orphans, you'll go to prison, this isn't going to look like an accident. Did telling the defendant any of these things that you told him, did that get him to stop? And she says, not really. And my analysis brain picks up, not really. Did that get him to stop? Not really. It's very much the same as yes, because it's not really. So there is a yes, there was some element of stop in there. I'll come back to that. And I had said, like, your mom just sent me a really beautiful text for my birthday, like, your family will be upset if I die. So once more, she's gone extra, but her extra is all about her efforts to try and stop this. And she doesn't present it in a great storytelling way. She doesn't say, I was so petrified, I was pleading, your family will be upset if I die, because she doesn't do any of that. It's all very factual. There are no persuasive words. He can't face our kids after this, and he did seem at that point to like calm down a little bit, like it seemed he took a deep breath and calmed down, which explains the not really. It did, something she said did get him to calm down, even if it was just a little bit, take a deep breath and calm down. So that not really, that was red flagged by me. I understand it now. And so I had this moment where I was like, okay, this is the break, like I can get out. And then he just starts hitting me with a rock, and we have a jump in time there, and then suggests that, something else happened, and he starts hitting me with a rock. The lawyer, no sense of drama. He just wants to pull it on back. Okay, I'm going to backtrack for just a moment, Arielle. As the defendant was on top of you, as the defendant was saying things, and as you were saying things back, were you also, or were you trying to defend yourself physically at all? And she says, yes. Straight answer, yes or no question. And she says, yes. Very believable way of talking. And I'm screaming and trying to defend myself physically. Interesting that she was asked about physicalness, but she goes to verbosity there, but she leads with screaming. But then she says, I'm trying to defend myself physically. So I think I bit his forearm at one point, trying to, that would have been his right forearm. The fine details are there again, not just bit his arm or bit him on the arm. It's very close. It's very, is bit his forearm at one point. That would have been his right forearm, just the details there. And then also I was squeezing his testicles with so I had my right hand trying to squeeze his testicles to get him to get off me. Okay. Was that, when you were doing those things, was that before or after he calmed down? That was before he calmed down, she says. She doesn't explain, does that explain the kind of wrestling? That it was a little bit more than wrestling, so biting forearms, not in any kind of wrestling I know, squeezing testicles, not really allowed in wrestling. Is it that she is, she knows she's done some violent things or physical things, biting his arm, squeezing his testicles? I'm not saying she wasn't justified in doing them, but she wants to downplay them a little bit to kind of wrestling. What happened? You said after the defendant calmed down. She says, oh, well, it felt like he calmed down. We've got an explanation here with well, and he felt like he calmed down. We know what's coming next, so he hadn't really calmed down because it looked like he took a deep breath. And again, I was screaming, and so he's covering my mouth and stuff. Again, she's not maybe sharing the full thing with us. Some other things were happening, but it's being covered up with just this generic and stuff. And then jump in time, we had this moment of like, it just seems he takes a deep breath. Interesting. We had this moment, but it's him that's doing the action, taking the deep breath. Why she described both of them in that moment? It could be that, we both felt a bit of calm in that moment, but she's joining herself there to that moment of calm and his deep breath. He just starts hitting my face and my head with a rock. Little bit of a stutter there. He just starts hitting my face. Maybe very nervous of saying it. Maybe that's very traumatic for it there. Also, though, present tense, trauma, could be. Did you see where the defendant got the rock from? And she says, I didn't see where he got it from. But like spatially, he was like reaching up around this area of my head, and she indicates where that is with her hands. So my impression was that there was a rock on the ground near to my head that he was able to grab. So here, plain language, non-persuasive language. It's all very straightforward. Just one or two little things, but when anyone talks, we're going to see one or two little things. What we're looking for are patterns, repetitions, clusters, and so on. I'm not really seeing very much of that, apart from the fact it's plain, it's direct, it's straightforward. But I do think she is missing some moments out. There's some jumps in time there that she's holding something back inside this story. Let's get some more from Arielle.
When the defendant was hitting you with the rock, did you say anything?
I just started screaming because in my mind, he was trying to knock me unconscious to get to be able to drag me over the edge. I just was screaming then as much as I could.
Did the defendant respond to what you were screaming?
No.
Did anybody other than the defendant respond to what you were screaming?
Yes. So I'm screaming, and I do think I was saying something like, please help. He's trying to kill me. I'm hoping somebody can kind of hear that. And I, at some point, hear a woman's voice say, we're here, we're calling 911. We're here, we're calling 911.
Okay, so after you hear that woman's voice, what happens?
He just kind of Gerhardt just kind of froze and knelt back away from me. And I just crawled away really slowly. And again, he seemed just frozen. And then I was yelling to the voices I heard, are you still there? Are you still there? Don't leave me. And I couldn't hear anybody calling anything back. So I just kept crab walking away. Like I'm on my butt, kind of like scooting. And I just kept going and got to like a lower part of the trail. And the women were down there, and one of them was on the phone with emergency personnel.
She's asked there, when the defendant was hitting you with the rock, did you say anything? She says, I just started screaming, because in my mind, he was trying to knock me unconscious to get to be able to drag me over the edge. So I was just screaming then as much as I could. She doesn't quite give a no there. She says she started screaming. She shares again what's in her mind, in my mind. Like I say, someone's making up a story. It's really hard to, make up your thoughts and feelings as well as events. So sharing what's on the mind, I'm liking that. I'm reassured by that. Also, maybe this makes more sense of, this wasn't an accident before. Maybe she thought he was trying to make her unconscious with the drugs so that he could throw her or drag her over the edge. Did the defendant respond to what you were screaming? No, she says. Very simple. Yes, no question. Yes, no answer. Did anybody other than the defendant respond to what you were screaming? Yes, she says, again, perfectly. And she goes extra. So I'm screaming, and I do think I was saying something like, please help, he's trying to kill me. Low confidence again. I do think I was saying something like, please help. I'm hoping somebody can kind of hear that. And I, at some point, hear a woman's voice say, we're here and we're calling 911. We're here, we're calling 911. Okay, so after that, you hear that woman's voice, what happens? She says, he just kind of Gerhardt just kind of froze. A real interesting stop and start there. He just kind of froze would have been fine. I mean, it's got just kind of which is just kind of very low confidence. But then again, he didn't literally freeze, he wasn't less than zero and rigid. So maybe that is why she uses that. But I'm more interested in why she was going to say he just kind of froze and then puts his name in it. For the first time in any of the testimony that we've heard, she uses his name. He just kind of Gerhardt just kind of froze and knelt back away from me. Interesting. Freezing. Oh yeah, I guess you could freeze and then move. I just crawled away really slowly. And again, he seemed just frozen. Lots of just there, minimizing this all down. And then I was yelling to the voices I heard, are you still there? Are you still there? Don't leave me. And I couldn't hear anybody calling anything back. So I just kept crab walking away, I'm on my butt, kind of scooting. We've got this and kind of likes and so on. Again, we've got lots of justs, but we do have that fine detail there of crab walking away on my butt, scooting. And I just kept going. and like got to a lower part of the trail. It's and the woman were down there, and one of them was on the phone with emergency personnel. So here, it's the little incidental things like the crab walking that make this feel like a true story to me, as well as the clarity she talks with and the directness with which she answers most of the questions. And she's sharing a thought process. She's very low on sharing emotions. She's not been asked about emotions. She's been asked about what happened. And she's sharing events, and also she's sharing her thought process there. Very clear for me. Now, that was her talking for the prosecution. Shall we listen to her on cross-examination? Just see how she matches up under a bit more pressure, because obviously this is someone acting on behalf of her husband asking her the questions. How does she bear up underneath that pressure? Have a listen.
At some point, he has a syringe, correct?
Yes, sir.
And according to you, you did not see where he grabbed that from. Is that right?
That's right, sir.
According to you, he's holding this syringe, and according to you, you flick it out of his hand, right?
Yes, I spotted his hand and caused him to drop the syringe. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
You mentioned that at some point, according to you, you see him holding a vial, correct?
Yes, sir.
And your belief was he was trying to load the syringe with the vial when he was wrestling with you, correct?
No, sir. The first syringe he
What?
produced.
1 second.
Sure.
So you knocked the first syringe, he's getting the second syringe, but you think the vial is because he wants to load the syringe, right?
That's right, sir.
Right. According to you, this is happening while you're on top. He's on top of you. According to you, there's a kind of a scuffle going on, and he's holding a vial with one hand, reaching for another, into his bag with his other hand, and he's also covering your mouth at some point, right?
Yes, sir. If I can explain, he has the vial in his right hand in a closed fist, and so he's using that arm and hand to kind of hold me down. And then when I'm trying to talk to him too, and when I start screaming, he gives up his search for the syringe with his left hand and will hold his hand over my mouth while I scream and then resume looking in his bag.
So holding the syringe in one hand.
No, sir. That's a vial in his hand.
I'm holding the vial with one hand, holding you down with that same hand, according to you, reaching for another thing, then covering your mouth. That's what's going on, according to you, yes?
When he's sitting on top of me, so his
Right.
weight is on me too, sir, yes.
And then you guys are having a conversation as well. You discussed that, yes?
I don't know that I would call that a conversation, but yes, we were.
I should make it clear there were some edits in that. The reason for those edits were just brevity. The lawyer was leaving long pauses before some of his questions. And on the Gerhardt episode, many people commented that the lawyers in this trial just seemed not at the top of their game. Question from Cross. At some point, he has a syringe, correct? Yes, sir, she says. She noticed that she was using yes before, or sures or whatever, but when she's on Cross, sir. Is that to keep her calm, to keep her respectful? I don't know, or sounding respectful, but she does answer the question. Yes, sir. And according to you, you did not see where he grabbed that from. Is that right? That's right, sir, she says. Now, I've got an issue with the way these questions are asked. I had the same one the last time. And according to you, you did not see where he grabbed that from. Is that right? Well, she only needs to say yes. And it's saying, according to me. That's not the same as factual. That's a little bit different. It's not according to me. This is actually what happened. She goes, that's right, sir. And he uses according to you a lot. And I know why he does it, but it, just leaves some debate about the answers. According to you, he's holding his syringe, and according to you, you flicked it out of his hand. Right. She says yes. Again, confirming. Really simple, straightforward. I swatted his hand and caused him to drop the syringe. Yes, sir. The syringe, one syringe. You mentioned at some point, according to you, you see him holding a vial, correct? Yes, sir, she says. Also straightforward so far. And your belief was that he was trying to load the syringe with the vial when he was wrestling with you, correct? She says, no, sir. She wants to make sure this is all exactly correct, because I went, why is she saying no there? But actually, she never mentioned in her telling of the story that we heard he was trying to load the syringe with the vial. There was just a vial. There was a syringe. Loading the syringe didn't seem like something he would be capable of doing. But she says, no, sir. The first syringe he produced. Now, That's interesting for me. I haven't heard about 2 syringes before, or more than 1 syringe, but to call it the first syringe she produced infers there are other ones. And also, talking about him producing it, she said she never saw it being produced before, it just appeared. Not the first syringe he had, but talking about producing a syringe appearing. You see why I've got problems with the syringe story. She's very clear, she's very believable in almost everything she says, apart from about syringes. She's interrupted, sadly. 1 second. So you knocked the first syringe, he's getting the second syringe. But you think the vial is because he wants to load the syringe, right? She says, that's right, sir. So she's not saying that he's trying to load it. She's saying that she thought he may want to load it, which is, she's very congruent. According to you, this is happening while he's on top of you. According to you, there's a kind of scuffle going on, and he's holding the vial with one hand, reaching for another in his bag with his other hand. He's also covering your mouth at some point, right? And she says, yes. And we know where he's going with all this. That he only has 2 hands. And she gets ahead of it, and she says, yes, sir. If I can explain, he has the vial in his right hand and a closed fist. So he's using that arm and hand to kind of hold me down. And we've got the kind of language again. And that's when I'm trying to talk to him too. And when I start screaming, so again, trying to talk to him, there was a lot more dialogue going on than might be apparent at first listen to the words. I'm trying to talk to him too. And when I start screaming, he gives up his search for the syringe with his left hand and will hold his hand over my mouth while I scream and then resume looking in his bag. Now, there's all sorts of present tense in there. He has the vial in his right hand. He's using that arm. It's trauma or made up. Tell you what I think. But also, actually, the question's in the present tense. He's covering your mouth at some point, right? He's holding the vial with one hand. So the question's in present tense. So actually, her present tense matches the question. The defense attorney says, so, holding the syringe in one hand, and she says, no, sir, it's a vial in his hand. She's very consistent with the story, and if he deviates from it, she's not going to go with it. Holding the vial with one hand, holding you down with that same hand, according to you, reaching for another thing, covering your mouth, that's what's going on according to you, yes. When he's sitting on top of me is her reply, so his weight is on me too. Sir, yes. So she's very consistent and very adamant about what was happening and why it was happening. She's not going to be caught out here. I mean, you guys are having a conversation as well. You discussed that, yes. She says, I don't know if I would call that a conversation, but yes, we were. So there was some dialogue going on. I think the dialogue is kind of being jumped over here. It's him saying things to her saying things to him. I think there was more going on there. There was a dialogue. They had a conversation about something that she doesn't want to share here. So the consistency is there. The consistency really is there, even when she's under pressure from this cross-examination. Very factual, very low on dramatic still, and no stutters and false starts. Go back and watch the Gerhardt episode, even if it's just for a couple of minutes of listening to him. Then compare it to how she tells the story. They are worlds apart. So that's Arielle Konig. What do I think? Well, look, I mostly believe her testimony for all the reasons I've been going through in this episode. It's fluid. It's really easy to picture as well when she's talking what she's talking about, which is a sign of a truthful story. Deceptive people tend to get themselves all muddled up in their words and they don't have the authentic language to describe what happened, so you have a harder time picturing it in your head. It's really easy to picture it. It's really easy to imagine what she was saying. It's very consistent as well all the way through. I didn't catch contradictions by and large. Factual, very clean, low on emotion, persuasive language or anything like that. But that syringe and vial story, I'm not too sure if that part of it, as she tells it, is entirely true. But what do you think? Let me know. If you want, you can get a hold of all the socials at neveratruerword.com. There you'll also find more podcasts and more videos, including the breakdown of Gerhardt Konig if you haven't seen that before. And you can sign up for the monthly Never a Truer Word newsletter, a monthly treat of detecting deception and the truth in the words that people use. You'll find all the information for those at neveratruerword.com. We'll see you soon for something new from Never a Truer Word. And remember, the truth is always in the words.